Texas Senator John Cornyn asking the FBI to get involved with bringing back Democrats to Texas. Cornyn writing a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel asking the Bureau to locate and arrest Democrats who left the state. He alleges that they left to avoid a redistricting vote. As long as there is no quorum in Texas, there cannot be a vote. President Trump commented on this issue yesterday.
Well, I think they've abandoned the state. Nobody's seen anything like it, even though they've done it twice before. And in a certain way, it almost looks like they've abandoned the state. It looks very bad. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Should the FBI get involved? Should the FBI get involved?
Well, they may have to. They may have to. No, I know they want them back. Not only the Attorney General, the governor wants them back. If you look, I mean, the governor of Texas is demanding they come back. So a lot of people are demanding they come back. You can't just sit it out. You have to go back. You have to fight it out.
Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott already ordering state police to find and arrest the over 50 Democrats that fled the state to delay votes on a redistricting map. That redistricting would give Republicans 5 more congressional seats. Democrats say this new map is a, quote, illegal voter suppression of Black and Latino Central Texans and a, quote, threat to democracy. Many of the Democrats are fleeing to Chicago or have fled to Chicago, where Governor DNC Chair Ken Martin and Governor J.B. Pritzker are in full support to stop this redistricting.
Is under assault. Voting rights are being completely violated. Now is not the time for one party to play by the rules while the other party has completely ignored them. So they've decided to cheat. They've decided to cheat, and we're going to respond in kind.
Donald Trump is a cheater. So is Governor Greg Abbott. And Texas Republicans are carrying out their will. And if they're going to cheat, then all of us have to take a hard look at what the effect of that cheating is on democracy. And that means we've all got to stand up and do the right thing. So as far as I'm concerned, everything is on the table.
Well, this has escalated very quickly, Lindsey, as the Republicans in Texas, including Greg Abbott and John Cornyn, now calling for those Democrats who broke quorum to be arrested. What do you think about the way this has been shaking out, right? The Democrats leave to prevent the vote, and now they are at risk of being arrested and possibly actually losing their state House seats.
Now, I want to be clear that I do understand the gravity of a job in Congress and why it's important to be working for your state in any capacity, and why it's important to be present to vote on things like the flooding that happened in Texas. But I do understand that this is more about redistricting than flooding. And I want to make sure that, if people think they're doing the best thing they can to protect fair districts within their city and their state, I think it's important that we don't rush that and we allow the space to do that accurately, not 5 years in the middle of a census. So a census is once a decade. We're in 2025. It's supposed to happen next in 2030. And I think it's very rushed. And obviously, to win the midterms, they've been very clear about that. And I know both sides have done this before in the past, but Texas is a rapidly diversifying state. And I think when we just look at the numbers, in the last few years, it's grown in 95% population between 2010 to 2020 for communities of color. So when you have that statistics, you have to understand that the maps haven't changed to represent a lot of those voices that are Black and Latino voices, and the districts haven't changed in any way, which is the whole point of the census. So when you think about the census doing its job and then trying to change that based on what politicians want, that's never ideal. And I also don't want to see this happening in a back and forth where now liberal states start to do the same thing and redistrict in a way that works for them, because redistricting is supposed to work for the voters to represent diverse voices, as opposed to just representing President Trump and what the interest might be for, one party or the other.
Yeah, I think the Democrats are going to end up on the losing side of this argument, because not only did they flee to one of the most gerrymandered states in the country, in Illinois, where Democrats have done exactly what they are accusing the Texas Republicans of doing by drawing these really ridiculous districts. I mean, there's literally a snake running through the middle of Illinois to split up another district to give Democrats greater representation. We see the same thing in California, where despite Republicans getting 40% of the statewide vote on an individual level, Republicans only get 1 out of every 5 congressional seats. And we also know that the census in 2020 made a mistake. In fact, they admitted that they had actually overcounted in Democratic states while undercounting in Republican states. And if they had gotten those numbers correct from the jump, you would have had similar increased representation like Texas is asking for, about 5 to 10 seats between Texas and Florida. That didn't happen, so apparently we're supposed to just wait 10 years, even though the census admitted they got it wrong, for us to correct that error. I think Texas Republicans are actually doing exactly the right thing.
Well, I think there's a concern, I think, historically, even in the last few years, like, for example, in Louisiana, the voting age population, around 33% of those people are black and 58% are white. And in 2021, state officials passed a congressional map that basically split it up to where black Louisiana natives only had one of the 6 districts in the state. And so it was, when you think about the rising population, I said again in Texas, it's one of those things where redistricting has had a historical negative benefit on negative implication on community of color. And so when you have that happening at the same time, no matter what the reasoning is, if it's not intentionally to be blocking certain groups or people, it ends up doing that when you're fighting for one party or the other, which is why I also would condemn it happening in those Democratic states and say that other Democratic states have a policy that they implement that they now want to get rid of for this back and forth, where they do this with an unaffiliated party and try to redistrict very unbiased and not in a way that affects them directly. And so I think we should start all looking at using the census properly, getting those numbers right, like you said, but also letting our institutions work. And that's why we have them set up, to work, and not for us to come in with man-made fixes that are really not proven themselves to be very helpful historically.
Yeah, I think the ideal would be to have independent bipartisan commissions that are drawing these maps as opposed to the state legislatures. But unfortunately, those are liable to be corrupted as well. I mean, in California, if you look at their so-called independent advisory council that draws the district, I think it's probably 9 out of 10 people on it are left-leaning or liberal, and you don't really have any Republican representation. So there has to be a way to make sure that those are also bipartisan and being represented in a fair way to the voters. And that just simply hasn't happened in most states. I mean, one of the few states that actually does have a truly bipartisan independent council is Maine, and they recently redrew their maps after the 2020 census, and even then basically took away one of the Republican, or at least toss-up districts, with Maine second, where they basically drew a line around Aurora so that that could be included in the second congressional district and give Democrats a little bit of a boost. So this is an issue really all around the country, and even though there's a lot of outsized focus on Texas right now, it's very clear that this is going to be a nationwide, I think, issue that voters are going to be talking about because of this particular flashpoint.
And I also think it's one of those times where people are looking at elected officials and saying, what is happening? There are so many issues on the table, and then some are fleeing out of the state, some are arguing about redistricting, but there's real pocketbook issues, again, with both parties getting away from those things. And we have to remember that gerrymandering doesn't just affect a political side of the aisle, it affects real people, like which schools get funded and so much stuff. And so I think you have to remember, as we're starting to cut districts off in different areas, remember that there's real people that will be implicated by this back and forth. And there's also real people in Texas that need solutions for flooding. So both parties maybe should find a different time to do this that's less convenient for what happens in the midterms and more convenient for the people that you're representing.
All right, and up next, a Democratic congresswoman is facing criticism after she said she was a proud Guatemalan more so than a proud American. Don't go anywhere. That's next on Rising.